My parents gifted my sister a $2 mansion for her wedding. Then they turned to me. "You're not allowed at the reception. You're too plain and will ruin the photos." I packed my bags in silence. 2 hours later, Mom called, screaming, "The locks are changed. The bank is here." I laughed. "I didn't just leave. I withdrew my down payment. Enjoy the eviction." Mom gasped. My mother was screaming before I even said hello. I knew the voice. Everyone in my family knew that voice, the one that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong and I was, somehow, at the center of it. Her words came out in fragments. Bank, locks, the property, the deal, gone. I stood in my apartment kitchen, still holding my coffee mug with both hands, and I let her finish. And then, when she finally took a breath, when she finally stopped long enough to hear me, I said 5 sentences. I said them slowly, because I wanted each one to land separately. Mom, I did not just leave. I withdrew the down payment. The escrow was in my name. I signed the release this morning. Enjoy the reception. She did not respond. There was a long sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a scream, something in between, like a woman watching a house she thought was hers collapse into the ground. And then the line went quiet. I set the phone face down on the counter. I picked up my coffee. I finished it. Before I take you through what happened, if this story speaks to you, if you have ever been the invisible one in your family, the one who holds everything together while everyone else gets photographed holding flowers, please subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel it. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are watching from. My name is Nora Callahan. I am 29 years old. I am a senior financial analyst at a mid-size investment advisory firm downtown. I have worked there for 6 years. I understand how money moves, how it pools, how it transfers, how it is held in escrow accounts that very few people actually read the fine print on. I know exactly what a funding party can and cannot do before a title transfer clears. I know this the way a surgeon knows where to cut, cleanly, precisely, without hesitation. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with 94,000 miles on it. My apartment is a studio, 1 large room, 1 decent kitchen, 1 window that faces east, so I get morning light without afternoon heat. I have kept 1 plant alive for 4 years. I consider this a significant personal achievement. My sister Vivienne drives a leased BMW that my parents quietly supplement every month. She is 26. She is objectively beautiful. The kind of beautiful that people comment on within 30 seconds of meeting her. The kind that opens rooms before she enters them. She does not do this on purpose. She has simply never had to. I am not Vivienne. I never have been. And for most of my life, I told myself that was fine. I told myself that I had other things. My salary, my independence, my ability to look at a balance sheet and understand things my family could not. I told myself that I had made peace with being the plain one, the competent one, the one who handled things. What I had actually done was build a system that made myself indispensable while asking for nothing in return. The two things look identical from the outside. From the inside, they feel nothing alike. I am telling you this not for sympathy. I am telling you this so you understand the architecture of what happened. And because when you understand what I gave the numbers, the years, the specific transfers on specific dates, then the 5 sentences I said on the phone make complete sense. They are not cruelty. They are accounting. 3 months into my first real job, my father called me on a Tuesday. His voice had that particular quality it always got when he needed something slightly too casual, slightly too careful, like a man walking across ice and trying to look like he was taking a stroll. He said the business was short on payroll that month, just a gap, just a temporary thing. He hated to even ask. He just needed $4,200 to cover the shortfall before Friday. I had $4,600 in savings. I had been building it since I was 16 years old. Birthday money, part-time jobs. The summer I worked double shifts at a coffee shop so I would have a cushion when I graduated. Every dollar was deliberate. Every dollar had a specific future attached to it. I sent the transfer that afternoon. $4,200. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself, family helps family. I told myself this once, very firmly, so I would not have to think about it again. 3 months later, my parents bought Vivian a car for her 19th birthday. A used Kia, nothing extravagant, but it was bought. It was wrapped in a big red bow in the driveway, and there was a photograph of her standing in front of it that my mother posted on Facebook with 37 heart emojis. My contribution to that month's family finances was not mentioned. I did not mention it either. By the time I was 23, I had been promoted once. By 25, I had been promoted again. I was earning good money for my age, and my family began to speak about this the way people speak about weather as an ambient fact of life that they benefited from without having to do anything about. Nora's doing well, thank goodness. That was the phrase. My mother used it at dinner parties. My father used it when someone asked how the family was holding up. It was never, Nora worked hard or Nora saved carefully. It was always, Nora's doing well, as though my salary were a natural resource, something that had simply appeared in the landscape. The mortgage shortfalls began when I was 23. My parents had overextended on a refinance years before I graduated, and the payment was tighter than they let on. I found out by accident my father forwarded me a bank overdraft notice by mistake, and then called me 5 minutes later, voice casual, saying he supposed he should tell me what was going on. He told me what was going on. I covered the gap, $1,200 that month, $1,500 the next. Then it became a standing arrangement, not formalized, never discussed openly, just understood. The way things in our family were always understood, by everyone except out loud. Vivienne, during this period, was building her modeling portfolio. She had done 3 regional shoots and 2 small campaigns. She made very little money, but she looked extraordinary in every photograph. My mother framed 3 of them and put them in the living room. She has never framed anything of mine. When I was 26, Vivienne decided to move to New York City. She had connected with a better agency. The opportunity was real. Nobody in my family questioned whether she should go. Of course she should go. She was Vivian. Doors opened for her. The question was only how. The apartment she found in Manhattan was $6,800 a month. My mother called me on a Saturday morning, voice bright, saying she knew I was so good with finances, and she was just wondering if I could help with the first few months, until Vivian got settled. She made it sound like she was asking me to proofread an email. I negotiated it. I am a financial analyst. Negotiating is what I do to covering the deposit plus 3 months. I told myself 3 months was reasonable. I told myself it would not become 14. It became 14. Vivian never once said thank you. Not once, in 14 months of payments. Not a text, not a card, not a mention at Christmas. I am not sure she knew the money was coming from me. I am not sure, she asked. At the Christmas dinner that year, the one I paid for the catering of, because that had also become a quiet arrangement, my mother raised a glass and said she was so proud of Vivian's independence and resilience in building her career in New York. I had the catering receipt in my bag. I smiled and I raised my glass. Vivian met Bryce Holt at a brand event in New York. He was 31, old money, new ambition, the kind of man whose family has had the same last name on the same buildings for 4 generations. He was, by every measure, my mother valued. A spectacular match. The engagement announcement happened at a family dinner I organized and paid for. I had made the reservation, ordered the wine, coordinated the cousins, confirmed the dietary restrictions. I did this because I was good at logistics, and someone had to be. Vivienne walked in with Bryce, and within 5 minutes she held up her hand. The ring caught the light in the way rings are supposed to catch the light when someone has spent a great deal of money on them. The table erupted. My mother cried immediately, the real kind of tears, the overwhelmed kind, the kind I had not seen since Vivian won a regional beauty pageant at 16. My father shook Bryce's hand for so long it became its own event. I hugged my sister. I said congratulations. I meant it. 20 minutes after the announcement, while the table was still buzzing, my mother turned to me, not to Vivian, not to my father, specifically to me. She put her hand on my arm, tilted her head, and said, "You'll help us with the finances for the wedding, won't you? You're so good at that." I said yes. I had not yet learned what I was agreeing to. 4 months before the wedding, my mother called with the plan. She had been talking to a real estate contact, a friend of Bryce's family. It turned out and there was a property, a 5-bedroom colonial in Westfield, white stone exterior, a circular driveway, 4,000 square feet, a chef's kitchen, a garden that had been professionally maintained for 12 years, listed at $2,100,000. She wanted to give it to Vivienne and Bryce as a wedding gift. She said it with the calm confidence of someone announcing a dinner reservation. My parents had assets, the equity in their home, the retirement draw my father had been pulling since he closed his business 3 years earlier. Between those two sources, they could pull together approximately $1,760,000. The seller needed a clean close. The gap was $340,000. She presented this to me not as a request, but as a logistics problem. She said, "You understand how escrow works. You understand how the transfer would be structured. You could be the funding party for that portion. It would go in under your name, and once the title clears, it becomes part of the property asset." She said this as though she were describing something ordinary, a carpool arrangement, a shared grocery run. She did not say thank you in advance. She did not say she knew she was asking a lot. She did not say she planned to pay me back, or acknowledge what I had already given over 7 years, or note that Vivienne had received roughly $400,000 in direct and indirect support during that same period, and I had received a Christmas card and a Facebook post about someone else's modeling career. She said, "You're so good at this kind of thing." I sat with the phone pressed to my ear, and I looked at the wall across from me and I did the math. Not the financial math, I had already done that in 10 seconds. The other math, 7 years. The first transfer at 22. The mortgage gaps. The Manhattan apartment. The catering bills. The wine at the engagement dinner. I thought, this is the last thing. After this, I stop. I sent the transfer instructions the following Monday, $340,000, wired into escrow, under my name, as the funding party, because I understood how escrow works, because I was so good at this kind of thing. The closing date was set for 2 weeks after the wedding. Nobody in my family read the fine print. I had written some of the fine print. It was a Thursday evening, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at my kitchen table reviewing the final escrow documentation. The transfer was 11 days out. My phone buzzed, my mother's name on the screen. I answered. She started with small talk. How was work? Had I seen the flowers Vivienne had chosen? Was I bringing anyone to the ceremony? Then she paused. The pause had a quality to it. The kind of pause that means something is coming that the person has rehearsed. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about the reception. Bryce's family has a very specific vision for the photographs. Very curated, very editorial. The photographer has suggested keeping the immediate group to people who, well, you know how photos are." I did not say anything. I let her continue. "You're not on the reception guest list, Nora, but the ceremony we thought maybe you could watch the live stream. We're having it filmed beautifully. You'll be able to see everything." And there it was. I was too plain for the wedding photos. My presence would disrupt the visual coherence. My face, my actual face, was a liability to the aesthetic of a photograph that would hang somewhere in a house my money was about to purchase. I sat completely still for a moment. I looked at the escrow paperwork in front of me. I looked at my name printed across the top of the first page. Nora K. Callahan. Funding party. And I felt something shift inside me, not anger exactly. Something colder and more precise than anger. Something that felt like clarity arriving after years of waiting. "Okay, Mom. I'll think about it." I ended the call. I put the phone down on the escrow papers. I picked them up and I read every page. Not for the first time, I had read them 4 times already. But this time, I was not reading them as a financial analyst. I was reading them as a funding party who had not yet authorized a release. I called Claire. Claire Osei is my best friend and a corporate attorney. She has known my family situation in full for 2 years. When I told her what my mother had just said, she was quiet for 3 seconds, the way she gets quiet when she is doing legal calculations in real time, and then she said, "Nora, you know you can stop, right?" "Do you want me to review the escrow paperwork tonight?" I said yes. She came over at 8 o'clock. We reviewed it for 2 hours. We ordered takeout. We did not talk about my mother's phone call again because there was nothing left to say about it. The paperwork said everything. I want to be clear about something. I did not make this decision in anger. I made it in absolute stillness, over 2 hours, with a trained attorney sitting across from me confirming my legal position. This was not impulsive. This was the most deliberate thing I have ever done. The wedding was on a Saturday. For the 2 weeks between my mother's phone call and that Saturday morning, I behaved in a way that my family interpreted as acceptance. I responded to group texts with single-word replies. I sent a confirmation of my attendance for the ceremony. The ceremony, not the reception, which was the only event I was technically still invited to. My mother texted cheerfully about the floral arrangements. I replied, "Beautiful." My sister texted me once during those 2 weeks. She asked if I was bringing anything for the morning of getting ready session. I replied, "I'll be there in spirit." She sent back a heart emoji. I wonder sometimes if she noticed. I think probably she did not. Vivienne has always operated in the assumption that the world is running smoothly around her, because for 26 years, it has been because people like me were running it. During those 2 weeks, I did 3 things that were not visible to my family. I reviewed the withdrawal mechanics with Claire a second time. The process was straightforward. I needed to submit a written instruction to the escrow company, signed, stating that as the funding party, I was withdrawing my deposited funds pending a confirmed closure. Because the title had not yet transferred, the funds had not yet legally left my control. The escrow company would notify the seller's agent. The seller would have options, but a clean deal falling apart 11 days before closing would almost certainly result in the property being relisted. I packed 1 bag, a carry-on, the things I would need for 2 weeks at my apartment. I left it by the door of my childhood bedroom on Friday evening, the night before the wedding, while my family was occupied with rehearsal dinner preparations in the next room. Nobody asked about the bag. It was not the kind of detail anyone in my family looked for when it came to me, and I changed nothing. I did not confront anyone. I did not have a final conversation. I did not deliver a speech at the rehearsal dinner. I sat at the table and I ate my food and I watched my family celebrate, and I thought, Tomorrow I will stop. The wedding was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. By 8 in the morning, the house was already in motion, my mother moving through the rooms with the focused energy she reserves for events she has planned down to the minute. My father quiet and helpful in the particular way he gets when everything is too important to risk a wrong word. Vivienne was in the master bedroom with a hair and makeup team. I could hear music. I could hear laughter. I had coffee in the kitchen. At 8:47, I went to my room. I sat at the small desk where I used to do homework as a teenager. I opened my laptop. I navigated to the secure portal for the escrow company. I composed the withdrawal instruction, a formal written request, specific language, my signature, Claire's notarization from the night before. I submitted it at 8:52 in the morning. The escrow company's system sent me a confirmation receipt at 8:54. I forwarded it to Claire. She replied in 30 seconds. 2 words. "I've got it." I closed the laptop. I picked up my bag. I walked to the kitchen. I set my house key on the counter, not dramatically, not in a visible spot. Just placed it there the way you place something you are done with. I took one last look at the kitchen, the one my mother had renovated twice, the one I had quietly funded the second renovation of, and I walked out the front door. My father's car was in the driveway. My mother's was beside it. The florist's van was parked at the curb. I walked past all of them. I drove to my apartment. 40 minutes. I made coffee. I put on a record, Chet Baker, the 1,954 sessions, something slow and clear and completely unhurried. I sat down in the chair by the east-facing window. I waited. Some people ask me if I felt guilty. Sitting there, listening to music, while my sister was getting married 40 minutes away. I want to answer that honestly. I felt a great number of things. Guilty was not one of them. What I felt was quiet. The specific kind of quiet that comes when you have been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and you have finally set it down. I canted. I mind. My father called at 11:33. I did not answer. He called again at 11:36. And 11:39. At 11:42, my mother called. I answered on the second ring. I want to describe her voice accurately, because it was not what I expected. I had expected fury, the performance fury, the kind she uses in arguments, the kind that has specific shapes and escalation patterns I have memorized over 29 years. What I heard instead was something raw. She was genuinely distressed. Not for Vivian, not even for the house. She was distressed in the way someone is distressed when a reality they have held as fixed and permanent suddenly comes loose. She had believed, for 7 years, that I would always be there to solve things, and she was discovering, in real time, that I had stopped. She said, the bank. She said, the escrow company. She said, the seller. She said, the locks. Meaning, I assume, that the seller had already signaled they were reversing access. She said all of this in fragments, overlapping, the way speech goes when comprehension hasn't fully landed. I let her finish. Then I said my 5 sentences. Mom, I did not just leave. I withdrew the down payment. The escrow was in my name. I signed the release this morning. Enjoy the reception. Silence. And then the sound I described at the beginning of this story, not quite a gasp, not quite a scream. Something between them. Something like a woman watching a certainty dissolve. I ended the call. 12 minutes later, Vivian called. This was the call I had not expected. And it was in ways I am still processing the most complicated one. She was crying. Not the performance crying my mother does, the theatrical kind, with perfect timing. Vivian was crying the way someone cries when they are standing in the middle of something that was supposed to be the best day of their life, and realizing they do not have a complete picture of what has been holding it up. Nora, what did you do? Mom, as the wedding is still happening, it's fine. Bryce doesn't know yet. But what did you do? I withdrew the money I put in, Vivian. It was my money. I had the legal right to do it before the title transferred. You'll be okay. The wedding is in 2 hours. Go get married. I didn't know you were unhappy, Nora. I didn't think you minded. As I sat with that for a moment, then I said, I know you didn't, Viv. That was the problem. I ended the call. I turned the record over to the second side. The mansion deal collapsed completely. The seller, having seen the withdrawal come through 11 days before closing, relisted the property within 72 hours. Bryce's family, who had not been made aware of the full financing arrangement, learned about it when my mother apparently tried to explain the gap. That conversation, which I heard about through Uncle Raymond, did not go well. Bryce's mother, according to Raymond, said simply, "Interesting structure." My parents consulted a family attorney about whether the withdrawal was reversible. It was not. I had acted within my rights as the depositing party before the legal transfer date. The attorney told them this. Claire had told me the same thing, which is why I had waited until I was certain. The group chat went active in a way I had not seen in years. Aunts, cousins, my mother's oldest friends. Word had gotten around as word always does in families, faster than any news service, with a specific velocity of information that confirms what people already suspected, but never said. A cousin named Rachel texted me privately. "Good for you." 2 words. I stared at them for a long time. My father sent an email. Subject line, "Was this really necessary?" I drafted 3 responses. I deleted each one. I sent nothing. There are conversations that do not need to happen, because everything that could be said has already been said. By actions, by years, by a withdrawal instruction filed at 8:52 on a Saturday morning while music played downstairs. I called Uncle Raymond 2 weeks after the wedding. Raymond is my father's older brother. He has been estranged from our family for 12 years over a dispute that everyone describes differently depending on who you ask. What I know is that it involved money and expectations, and a moment when Raymond finally stopped being the person who solved things. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was the same as I remembered from childhood, unhurried, a little dry, like someone who has already decided nothing is going to surprise him. I told him what had happened. He was quiet for a moment when I finished. Then he said, I wondered how long it would take you. I did the same thing, you know, differently, different circumstances. But I stopped, one day, and I waited for them to notice. They noticed, but they called it betrayal. Same as they're calling yours. It's not betrayal, Nora. It's just the moment you stopped being a resource and started being a person. They don't have a category for that. I wrote that down afterward. I still have it. 3 weeks after the wedding, the group chat went silent. Not because anyone had resolved anything, but because the performance requires an audience that responds, and I had stopped responding. My mother's messages, the long paragraphs about how hurt she was, the forwarded Bible verses at 6 a.m, the photographs of Vivienne's wedding that somehow managed to document every member of the immediate family except me went without reply. Not blocked, simply unreplied to. Silence, I have learned, is the one language my family does not know how to perform into. They can perform into anger, they can perform into guilt, they can perform into pity and confusion and collective outrage, but silence gives them nothing to hold. Silence just sits there, patient and complete, and eventually even the most practiced performer gets tired. The messages slowed, then they stopped. My father sent me a photograph in the 4th week. No caption, no context, just an image of a bookshelf he had built in his garage. Solid oak, 3 shelves, hand-joined. He used to build things like that before his back got bad, before the business took all his time, before he became primarily a man who stood behind my mother and nodded. I saved the photograph. I did not reply, but I saved it. It is a Tuesday morning in early spring. The light through my east-facing window is the particular color it gets in March, when winter is not quite done arguing with the coming warmth, soft and slanted and patient. The kind of light that does not demand anything of you. My coffee is still warm. The plant on the windowsill has put out a new leaf, which I noticed 3 days ago, and have not stopped feeling quietly pleased about. The record player is on. Chet Baker again, because some mornings you return to the things that held you steady. I am sitting in the same chair I sat in on the Saturday of the wedding. The same apartment, the same window. Everything is the same, and nothing is the same. My mother has not called in 6 weeks. I know this because I have not blocked her and my phone shows no missed calls. She has not called. This is for my mother, who once called me 14 times in a single day during a family disagreement, a seismic silence. I do not know what it means. I have decided, for now, not to need it to mean anything. My father sends photographs occasionally. Woodworking, a corner cabinet he finished last month, a small table with carved legs. He does not write captions. He does not explain. He sends the image and I receive it and I save it without replying. And I think about the fact that he was a builder once, and I am a builder in my own way, and we have never once talked about that, the thing we share, the only real thing, because there was always someone else's crisis in the room. Vivienne and Bryce are living in a rented house in Westfield, a different house, smaller, not gifted. I heard this through Claire, who heard it through someone. Vivienne texted me once a short message, carefully worded, the kind of text you can tell someone has rewritten multiple times. She said she had been thinking about what I said. She said she did not think she had been seeing clearly. She said she was sorry, and that she knew that word was small. I read it 3 times. I have not replied yet. I am not sure what I want to say. I am not sure I need to say it quickly. I used to think that being loved by my family meant being necessary to them, that if I was useful enough, generous enough, invisible enough, they would eventually see me, the actual me, not the resource, not the fixer, not the one who handles things. I arranged my entire life around that belief. I worked harder. I asked for less. I kept the peace so many times that I forgot what my own voice sounded like when it was not apologizing or conceding or making itself smaller so someone else could be larger. They did not see me. They saw a funding party. So I stopped funding. I am not going to tell you this is a happy ending, because I do not think it is an ending at all. My family is my family. The love is real, even when the behavior is wrong. These 2 things are both true, and they do not cancel each other out. And I am learning slowly. in the light of this east-facing window to hold them both without letting either one make me into something I am not. What I can tell you is this: the $340,000 is back in my account. My name is on every page of my own financial life. My door is locked, and I am the only person with the key. The plant on the windowsill has a new leaf. I consider all of this significant. They said I wasn't pretty enough to be in the photo, but I was always the one paying for the frame. When I stopped, the whole picture fell. That's not a threat, that's accounting. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know what this feeling is. The feeling of choosing yourself quietly, deliberately, with the receipts in your hand over someone else's plan for you, over someone else's comfort, over a version of family that asks you to be invisible so they can be seen. I have one question for you. Have you ever been the one everyone leans on until it costs them something? Have you ever been the family's financial answer, the logistical solution, the person who handles it and never once been in the photograph? Tell me in the comments. I want to read every one. And if you want more stories like this, about people who stopped shrinking, who finally did the accounting, who realized that love should not have a funding party, check the description below. There is a full collection waiting. Thank you for being here. It means more than you know.